She took everything from me. My invention, my trust, my future. She ran with what was mine, thinking she could erase me from the picture. But what she didn't know was that I wasn't just going to sit back and let her win. I would make a better version, patent it, and make sure she paid for every lie. My name is Alex, and I'm 30 years old. And this is how I turned betrayal into my greatest victory. It felt like the moment I had been waiting for. Months of sleepless nights, long hours of work, and an idea I truly believed could change everything. My invention wasn't just some product. It was the culmination of everything I had poured my energy into for years. It was supposed to be my big break. And then she took it. Her name was Emily. She was smart, driven, ambitious. Everything I thought I wanted in a partner. We met in college, both of us pursuing engineering degrees, both with a hunger to create something that could leave a mark. We'd spent countless nights brainstorming ideas, sketching designs, and talking about our dreams. But what I didn't know then, what I couldn't see, was that all the while she was taking notes, not just on my ideas, but on me. The invention I had been working on? It was revolutionary, something that could revolutionize the tech industry. I had been perfecting it in the background while she and I worked side by side, trusting each other, supporting each other. But trust, I learned the hard way, isn't something you can ever take for granted. It started small. She was always eager to help, always asking questions, giving suggestions, getting more and more involved in the process. At first, I thought it was just the excitement of having someone who shared the same vision. But then, she started pushing me. "Why don't you take a step back?" she'd say. "Let me handle this part. I can get it done faster." I was so focused on the bigger picture that I didn't see it. I didn't see her slowly taking control, slowly putting her fingerprints on something that was supposed to be mine. The late nights, the long hours. I was burning myself out and she was slipping through the cracks. One night, after weeks of not hearing from her, I went to her apartment to work on some final details. She wasn't home, but on her desk, there it was, my design. My project, my invention, the prototype I had been meticulously perfecting for months, sitting in front of me, wrapped in a sleek professional folder. It hit me like a punch to the gut. I didn't even have to look closer. I knew. The model was identical to mine, the sketches, the code, everything. But what made it worse wasn't just the stolen work. It was the realization that she had done this behind my back, while I had trusted her completely. She had run with it. And what did I get? Nothing. I called her, and when she answered, I could hear the calm in her voice, the calm of someone who knew exactly what she had done. "Ethan," she said, "I didn't mean for it to go this far, but I've decided to take this to investors. It's already too late for you." I didn't know how to respond. Betrayal, anger, hurt. All of it came crashing down on me at once. This wasn't just a business move for her. It was personal. "Emily, you can't do this," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is mine. You know it's mine." "I didn't steal anything," she replied, her tone ice cold. "You were too slow, Ethan. You were too busy talking about your ideas instead of doing something about them. Now I'm moving forward, and you can't stop me." And just like that, the woman I had loved, the woman who had been my partner, had become my enemy. The worst part? She was good at what she did. She was smooth, calculating, and had already positioned herself in a way that would make it impossible to go after her legally. Or so she thought. I stood there, staring at the folder on the desk, feeling my world collapse. Everything I had worked for, everything I had sacrificed, was suddenly slipping through my fingers. But that wasn't the end of the story. No, not even close. Because what she didn't realize was that this wasn't over, not by a long shot. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the folder on Emily's desk. Maybe it was minutes, maybe hours. But in that moment, a flood of rage and betrayal consumed me. I couldn't just let this go. I wouldn't let her walk away with my work, with my dreams. She thought she'd taken everything from me. She was wrong. I thought back to all those nights we spent together, brainstorming, building ideas, trusting each other. I remembered how I'd let her get close, let her become a part of my life and my vision. And yet, while I was letting her in, she had been quietly plotting. All of it a slow burn of manipulation. It made my blood boil. But as angry as I was, I knew I couldn't rush into a blind rage. I had to be smart. I had to make sure that when I made my move, it was calculated, methodical. I had to turn this betrayal into my advantage. She might have taken my invention, but she didn't have the foresight, the patience, or the skill I did. I left her apartment that night, the weight of the stolen invention pressing down on my shoulders. I couldn't act just yet. I needed to think, to plan. I needed time to gather everything I would need to not only take back what was rightfully mine, but to prove to her that you don't mess with someone who's willing to fight back. I started by going over everything again. My original designs, the research I had done, the code I had written. I wasn't just working on a product. I had a concept, a vision, and I had protected it with everything I had. My first move was to double-check the patent I had applied for months ago. The paperwork wasn't finalized, but I had everything ready. I had done everything by the book, knowing how important it would be to have that legal protection in place. I sat down with a lawyer the next day, someone I trusted. He didn't hesitate when I told him what had happened. "Ethan, this is cut and dry. You've got your proof. If she's already using your idea, you're well within your rights to sue her for patent infringement." It wasn't just about revenge. This was a matter of principle. My creation wasn't just mine by right. It was mine by law. Emily had crossed a line. She thought she could steal my work, my future, and get away with it. But now she was going to see the consequences of her actions. I had always been the quiet one, the one who stayed focused on the work. I didn't chase fame or recognition. But Emily, she was loud, confident, ready to take credit for anything that came her way. And now it was time for her to see that there was a price to pay for that kind of arrogance. I spent the next few weeks preparing. I filed the official patent as quickly as possible, ensuring everything was locked down. Then I gathered all the evidence I could find. The emails, the design sketches, the photos of the prototypes I had been working on in secret. I had a timeline, and I was meticulous about documenting everything, even when I thought it wasn't necessary. But I didn't stop there. I knew Emily well enough to know she wouldn't back down easily. She would fight this tooth and nail. So I reached out to a few key contacts, people who could help me gather more information, who could help me understand her next move. This wasn't just a legal battle. It was a game of strategy, and I was going to outplay her at every step. One of my contacts came through. A friend of mine in the venture capital world had a connection who had been speaking to Emily. It didn't take long for the truth to come out. She had been pitching my invention to investors, trying to secure funding before I could make a move. She was already planning to launch it as her own, hoping to cut me out entirely. That's when I knew. I wasn't just fighting for a patent anymore. I was fighting for my future, for everything I had worked for. But more than that, I was fighting for my pride. I was going to make sure Emily learned the hard way that you don't take what doesn't belong to you, without consequences. Now it was time to hit her where it would hurt the most. I was going to patent a better version of the invention, something Emily wouldn't see coming. And I was going to use every tool at my disposal to make sure she paid for what she had done. The days after I realized what Emily had done felt like a blur, but the fury in me was crystal clear. I wasn't just going to fight for what was mine. I was going to come back stronger. The problem with Emily's theft wasn't just the idea. It was that she had underestimated me. She thought I was slow, that I'd give up, that my invention was just a fleeting passion project. But what she didn't know was that I had something better in mind. I didn't just want to get my patent back. I wanted to make her regret the day she ever thought she could take what was mine. I wanted her to realize she couldn't outsmart me, and I'd make sure she'd pay for this betrayal in more ways than one. So, I went back to the drawing board. Not just to make a better version of the invention, but to innovate beyond what I had originally imagined. If Emily thought she could take my original idea and run with it, she was in for a rude awakening. I spent days, weeks, redesigning and refining. I worked tirelessly, sometimes pulling all-nighters, going without meals and forgetting what day it was. Every hour I poured into this new version was a declaration to myself that I would not let her win. When the prototype was finished, it was better than I could have imagined. It was more efficient, more innovative, and more polished than the first one. I had not only improved on the idea, but I had also added new elements that would make it harder for anyone to replicate. This time, I made sure every detail was secured. I filed for a patent on the new design, and this time, I made sure there was no ambiguity. The legal framework was airtight. I also made a point of documenting everything. Every conversation we had, every email, every draft, everything that could prove my ownership, my work, and my timeline. She had thought she could steal from me, but I wasn't the same person I was when we first met. I had become smarter, more cautious, and more determined. Now I was the one in control. Once the new patent was in place, I didn't waste any time. I filed a lawsuit against her, officially. Emily thought she could walk away from all of this without consequences, but she was wrong. I wasn't just suing for the stolen invention. I was suing for damages, for the theft of my intellectual property, and for the harm she had caused to my career. I knew this wouldn't be easy. The legal battle would be long, and Emily had connections, resources, and a reputation she was willing to protect. She was a skilled manipulator, and I wasn't naive enough to think she would back down quietly. But there was one thing I had that she didn't: the truth. The lawsuit was just the beginning. I knew that to really make her understand the gravity of what she had done, I had to show her that her actions had consequences. So I went further. I made sure to inform every investor who had been in contact with her about the stolen idea, about the legal proceedings, and about the truth of who owned the rights to the invention. I wasn't just going to let her benefit from her crime. I was going to make sure she lost everything. I had no intention of playing fair, not when she had already stolen from me. She wanted to play the game? Fine. I'd show her what it meant to truly lose. Weeks turned into months, and the pressure began to mount. The legal team I had hired was relentless, gathering evidence and compiling every piece of information that would prove my case. Meanwhile, I kept my head down, focusing on my work. The new invention I had patented was starting to gain attention. Investors were interested, and I was even getting calls from companies wanting to partner with me. The original prototype, Emily's version, it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I was the one moving forward. Then, one day, Emily reached out to me. Her message was cold, professional, but underneath it I could feel the panic. She wanted to settle. She wanted to avoid the public embarrassment, the damage to her reputation. She offered a financial settlement, hoping that I would take the deal and walk away. But I wasn't interested in money anymore. I wasn't interested in her offers. This wasn't about the money. This was about justice. I wrote back, but my response was clear and final. I'm not interested in settling. I'm going to make sure this goes all the way. You'll learn the price of stealing from me. She didn't reply after that. As the legal proceedings continued, I felt the weight of the battle pressing down on me. The pressure didn't just come from the lawsuit itself. It came from everything surrounding it. Every call with my lawyer was a reminder that Emily's theft had upended my life. Every email from investors, every press mention of the stolen invention, was another piece of the puzzle falling into place, making it clear that this wasn't just a legal battle. It was a fight for everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed. But with each passing day, the momentum began to shift. Emily had no idea how far I was willing to take this, how relentless I could be when it came to protecting my work. She underestimated me, thinking that she could simply smooth things over with money or a quiet settlement. But that's not how I operated anymore. I wasn't backing down. I spent every waking hour preparing, going over the evidence, tightening up the case, and doing everything in my power to stay one step ahead of her. The tech world was starting to take notice of the case, and I knew that in a few months it would be impossible for her to move forward without facing public scrutiny. Every time I saw an investor or a partner reach out to her, I made sure they knew the truth. I wasn't going to let her quietly steal what was mine. But the pressure, it was starting to take its toll. I wasn't just fighting for my invention anymore. I was fighting for my reputation, my career, and everything I'd ever dreamed of. Every phone call felt like a battle. Every conversation with my lawyer felt like we were inching closer to the edge. But the truth was, Emily didn't know who she was dealing with. She had stolen my idea and thought I would just accept it. She had no idea I would go to the lengths I did to make sure she paid the price. And then, the tipping point came. I was sitting in my office late one night, going over some final details for the case, when I got a notification on my phone. A news article popped up, something about Emily's company gaining attention for her version of the invention. She had made a public announcement about her plans for a launch, claiming credit for the idea, the design, everything. She was pushing forward as if nothing had happened, pretending like she had somehow won. It was the final straw. I had been patient. I had been methodical. But this was a line I couldn't let her cross. She was putting my reputation at risk. She was trying to erase me from the very thing I had created. And that was something I couldn't allow. I called my lawyer immediately, and we made the decision to push harder than ever before. It was time to make sure Emily understood just how serious this was. She thought she could take my invention and run with it. Fine. But now, she was going to face the consequences of her actions, and I wasn't going to stop until she paid for every lie, every stolen moment of credit. We filed an emergency injunction that night, demanding that her launch be halted. The tech community was watching closely, and it was clear this was the beginning of a much bigger battle. The injunction would stop her from moving forward with the product, and it would force the public to see just how far she had gone to steal from me. The next day, I got the call. The injunction had been granted. It was a small victory, but it felt like the first real step toward taking back control of my life. I wasn't just suing her for damages anymore. I wasn't just fighting over patents. I was fighting for justice. I was fighting for my future. The next move was hers, but I knew that the silence from her side wasn't a sign of surrender. No, it was the calm before the storm. She wasn't going to let this go easily, but I wasn't going to stop either. I had no intention of letting her get away with this, and this time, I wasn't just fighting for my invention. I was fighting for everything I'd worked for, everything she had tried to steal from me. The battle was far from over, but I was more than ready for whatever came next. The days following the injunction felt like a whirlwind. I had gained a small victory, but the real battle was far from over. Emily wasn't just going to give up because of a legal ruling. She had too much on the line, too much ego invested in her version of the invention to let it slip away quietly. But neither was I. I had built my life around this invention, around the belief that what I created meant something that couldn't just be stolen. Emily's silence after the injunction was chilling. She wasn't responding to calls, to messages, or even her lawyers. It was as though she had gone into hiding, and yet I could feel her presence looming. She knew she was cornered. She knew that if she didn't act fast, the world would see her for what she really was, someone who had stolen my ideas, my hard work, and tried to erase me from the equation. I kept working, though. I wasn't going to stop. I doubled down on my project, refining my invention even further, making sure that every detail was flawless. I wasn't just going to sit back and let the legal system decide my fate. I was going to continue building, continue moving forward, because that's what I had always done. I knew that if I just sat around waiting for Emily to make her next move, I'd lose the one thing I couldn't afford to: momentum. Meanwhile, Emily's silence was broken by a bombshell. She filed a counterclaim, accusing me of patent fraud, saying that I had stolen her ideas. She had the audacity to claim that she was the true inventor, that I had taken from her what was rightfully hers. It was outrageous. The gall, the nerve, to try to flip the situation on its head and paint herself as the victim when she knew the truth. I laughed when I heard about the counterclaim. It was a last-ditch effort. Desperate. She had no case. I had the proof. Every email, every design sketch, every late-night conversation where she was slowly stealing my vision right out from under me. And yet she was trying to turn the tables. She was trying to make me the villain, make me the one who had wronged her. But I wasn't having it. I had already prepared for something like this. The counterclaim didn't scare me. It just made me more determined. I wasn't going to let her get away with this, no matter how many times she tried to twist the truth. I wasn't going to let her rewrite this story. So I hit back harder. I contacted the investors who had been wooed by her lies and explained everything. I shared the documentation. Everything that proved the invention was mine, not hers. I reached out to the industry leaders and experts who had seen my work long before she even knew about it. I wasn't just defending my invention anymore. I was defending my reputation. Then it got personal. I received an anonymous tip that Emily had been trying to sell my invention, my intellectual property, to a competitor behind my back. She had been quietly shopping it around to the highest bidder, trying to push me out and make a quick profit. She had sold me out for a few pieces of silver. That was it. That was the last straw. I had been patient, I had played by the rules, but now she was playing dirty. She wasn't just stealing my invention. She was trying to profit off of it in ways that were illegal. And that's when I decided it was time to take the gloves off. I contacted my lawyer again and said, "We're not just suing for damages anymore. We're going for everything. We're going after her for everything she's worth." We filed a new set of charges: fraud, intellectual property theft, conspiracy to sell stolen goods. The stakes had just been raised, and now I wasn't just looking for justice. I was looking for a way to make sure Emily would never be able to take advantage of someone again. The legal battle escalated quickly after that. The courts were now looking at the full scope of what she had done, and it wasn't pretty. Emily had underestimated me at every turn, and now she was facing the consequences. Then came the settlement offer. Her lawyers reached out, offering a substantial sum to settle the case outside of court. They knew it was over. They knew they couldn't win, but I wasn't interested in money anymore. I didn't want her dirty cash. What I wanted was to make sure that when this was over, she would never again think she could get away with something like this. I responded with my own offer. She had 48 hours to publicly admit her wrongdoings, pay me a substantial sum, and leave the tech industry behind. If she refused, we would go to trial, and I would expose everything in court, where the entire world would see what she had done. Her response was immediate. She backed down. She agreed to everything: a public apology, the financial settlement, and she agreed to stay out of the industry indefinitely. It was a victory, but not one I savored. What I had fought for wasn't money, it was principle. It was the truth, and in the end, the truth won. The final settlement wasn't what I thought it would be. I had prepared myself for a battle that might end in public exposure and loss, but instead, Emily caved. Her sudden submission felt almost anticlimactic. I expected a sense of triumph, a sense of justice being served. Instead, I felt a strange emptiness. Sure, I had won. She publicly admitted her wrongs, and she agreed to step away from the industry that she had tried to tarnish with her theft. I had my invention back, my name cleared, and a significant financial settlement that would help me push forward. But it wasn't just about that. What I wanted most wasn't the money or the victory. It was the principle of standing up for what was mine. What I wanted was to show the world that you can't just take something from someone else and get away with it. But there was something else, something I hadn't anticipated: the feeling of closure. After all the rage, the planning, the sleepless nights, and the fights in court, it was over. The victory wasn't as sweet as I thought it would be, but it was necessary. I needed to know that I wasn't just someone who had been taken advantage of. I needed to know that I could stand my ground, protect what was mine, and keep moving forward. I looked back at the process, the betrayal, the rage, the moments when I thought about giving up. Emily had taken my idea, my trust, my work, and turned it into something she thought was hers. But in the end, she underestimated me. She thought I was just some quiet guy with a dream, too passive to fight back. She didn't see the strength I had, the drive, the refusal to let someone walk all over me. In the aftermath, I focused on my next steps. The legal battle had put a halt to everything for a while, but now I had the green light to move forward. The invention I had worked so hard on was finally mine to launch. My version, my improvements, my vision. And this time I made sure I was protecting it from every angle. The patent was airtight, the business plan solid, and I had the backing I needed to take this to the next level. The tech world was buzzing with my announcement. Investors reached out, companies began to show interest, and I knew this time I was ready. I wasn't the same person who had started this journey, the same person who had trusted someone like Emily. I had learned from my mistakes, from the betrayal, and now I was in control of my future. The money? It didn't matter. Sure, the settlement helped, but I had already moved past that. What mattered was the belief in myself. What mattered was knowing that I had the skill, the drive, and the resilience to create something better, something stronger than ever before. As I stood in my office looking at the blueprint for the next phase of my company, I couldn't help but smile. I had done it. Despite the pain, the betrayal, the fight, I had done it. And I knew that no matter what happened next, I could never be taken down by someone like Emily again. I wasn't just survivor of a theft. I was a creator. And this time, nothing was going to stop me from making my mark on the world.